It's now time for this month's broadcast of Learning Now TV.
Welcome to the first of two programmes in September of Learning Now Television. It always feels like the start of a new term to me. So Nigel, what's on the agenda?
It certainly does. You're quite right, Kate. It feels a bit like that. Well, we've got some contrasting people on the programme today, which is always a good thing. The first is Megan Torrance, very experienced, runs Torrance Learning, was part of Will Tolheimer's conference, is based in the United States, talking about new organizational design and new instructional design. And then we've got kind of the opposite end of the spectrum, Zara Clark Johnny. Zara's one of the 30 under 30, works for Southwark Council, and is one of our up and coming young L&D professionals. She's a great person. So contrasting interviews, this program, Kate.
Well, it sounds like a good one. Enjoy the show.
Today, I have the privilege of talking to David James. David is the CLO of Loop.co, and as I always add, Loop with 3 O's. And David has literally just released a paper, which we're going to talk about today. The paper is called Digital Learning That Works Harder So You Don't Have to. It's about automation, essentially, automating the processes that you can automate so that you don't have to waste your time on tedious, low-level stuff, and you can focus on the higher-level stuff. So first of all, David, why did you write this paper and release it to an unsuspecting public?
Well, this is born from can I say decades of frustration? That especially in in-house roles, that I found that inordinate amounts of my time and my team's time was always driving traffic towards platforms and content. That was on top of the performance and capability stuff that we were really tasked with. So in my in-house roles, I was always frustrated that we had the promise of technology and yet we were working for the machines, driving the traffic towards it. To this day, whenever I see the role of LMS administrator, I think it sounds dystopian that we've got people whose job it is to make the technology work, and then you've got the people who have to train employees how to use it. I just think that it's 2020. We need to be expecting a great deal more from our learning tech. So this paper is designed to extend everybody in learning and development's expectations of what technology can and should do for us. And none of it is pie in the sky. None of it is future focused. This is all possible right now.
You're taking a pop at LMSs, and I'm not going to criticize you one little bit for that, because I think they tend to look a bit like the past than they do the future. At least some of them do. But you're also taking a pop at our lack of embracing of say, digital marketing techniques, which organizations use to get stuff out there, but we don't use the same techniques inside the organization to pull people towards us. We still use very old-fashioned ways of drawing in learners. And as you say, a lot of it is pushing out emails and high intense work rate stuff when we could be doing it a lot more simply. So let's just go through the elements that you think we could automate. Start with how we bring our learners to the learning. How are we going to automate that?
Well, first of all, it requires us to think differently about our role and our value. So if we were going to look at this really crass, in a very crass manner, we might think about how we might market our existing content to drive eyeballs to the website, but it's the wrong way around. If we are starting with our solution without fully understanding the problem, then we continue as we are, trying to drive traffic to justify our investment in said platform or said content. So it really does have to start with what it is you're trying to achieve. So what is it who are you trying to influence within your organization, and be distinct about that. And yes, you're right. I mean, it's digital marketing principles, really. Understand your target market, what it is that they are trying to do, and offer them value so that they can do it better with your help. So one way of looking at it is considering the tools that marketing already use. So you've got HubSpot, for example, which is an automation tool that once you've identified your target market, can actually pull them through your funnel to get them to do the things that you want them to do. And of course, in marketing, ultimately, it's to land on a website or into a store or restaurant and for them to spend their money. Now, if we consider, say, new starters or new managers, people, I mean, pretty much everybody's adapting to a new environment right now. Just spend some time to figure out what it is that they are trying to do, and then provide them with the insights, know-how, and information that can help them to do that. But you could we could do this in a similar way to marketing do already. Drop them into a campaign. So as that campaign recognizing where they are in terms of perhaps their job function, their department, their maturity in the organization, the change that they're expected to respond to, and then provide them with content and nudges that help them to do the thing that they are trying to do over a period of time. Now, in the same way as marketing would do as well, and which I think is long overdue in learning and development, is build user insights into the journey. So it's not a delivery play, it is a conversation based around what it is people are trying to do in the context of their work, not in the context of their learning, but in the context of what it is they're trying to do. Is this useful? What's missing? What else do they need? What we found is that people will engage in a conversation when it's around the unfamiliar situations and challenges they're facing in relation to the work that they're doing, as opposed to engaging in a conversation around the learning that we would like them to do. So it is all focused on the user.
What you're saying really is, let's treat learners like adults who are quite capable of discriminating around any kind of opportunity in the workplace, including learning opportunities. And they will go where they're motivated, interested, and it's solving a problem that they have that exists. So focus on problem solving, not selling courses. And that cuts out all the need to sell, cajole, set up big admin systems to lure people into a program that they don't even know they want, and perhaps don't want in the first place anyway. And we use the excuse that it's compulsory or it's good for you or everyone else has done it, rather than, is this what you need to make your work more productive, easier to do? So in focusing on helping people through the workflow, we're actually helping ourselves through the workflow. That's what you're saying, isn't it, really?
Yeah, that's right. You'll have no problem getting engagement in your learning tech if you are helping to solve the problems that people are experiencing. And this is the key part, when they need your help. Yes. For how long have we delivered too much content before they face the challenges and it doesn't sink in? How long have we neglected, say, new managers before we've given them the formal development that they craved on day one? It's often weeks and months. But if we can be there to help people, to guide and support people, to do more of the right stuff, to help them to address the friction that they're experiencing, and help them to get results when they need the help, that's when we not only gain the trust, but we gain their attention. So it's all about, so much of it is about, it's the right stuff at the right time, but we don't determine that it's the right stuff at the right time. We understand from them. Yeah.
I quite agree with you. And you're right that if we set it up it should be self-fulfilling and self-motivating and have its own momentum. You don't have to completely move the wheel, edge it into life every time you want anything to happen. So what about the LMSs? What's wrong with an LMS? What don't they do that you think they should do?
First of all, the problem with a lot of LMSs is that they seek to solve the problems of learning and development almost to the detriment of the user themselves. So it is a content repository or delivery tool, a home to appease your university or academy builders, where really they don't seek to address what it is that people are trying to do. So we've got to look at it. We've got to look at the problems very, very differently in my regard, and first of all, and challenge this belief that buying a platform that does everything is going to be the silver bullet that solves all our problems. Because unless we determine what the real problems are, then we're shopping blind. And it really, I mean, as far as learning and development is concerned here, it's not just the problem within the functions. A lot of the time, it's the problem with procurement as well, because once you've got your feature requirements, you are simply looking at speeds and feeds rather than the problems it solves. But I mean, in response to what you said there, if we look to frame a problem and then let the viewer determine whether they've got the tools, or they've even thought that tools could help them. I mean, compliance is a universal problem for organizations and learning and development. But is anybody really considering automating that entire process? So when we look at what LMSs could be doing or should be doing or aren't doing, so are they providing campaigns that alert people to the compliance requirement? Is it dropping in a link or providing people with the information that they need in order to complete it? Are you automating follow-ups, both to the individual, linking it into the tools people use for work, so Teams or Slack, Salesforce, wherever it is, so it's not necessarily just sitting outside on the LMS. And of course, messaging provides you with a greater opportunity to, how do I say this politely, constantly bombard your people with the requirement that they have to complete this. I mean, is the LMS then automating the escalation to the manager or to HR? Is the LMS providing automated reports to line managers periodically to say, these are the people who've completed it, these are the people that haven't? Is your LMS creating an automatic renewal? Is it linked into your HR system to recognize when people change jobs and then have to complete more compliance training? And the big question overall here is, if you've got all of this automated, can you go on holiday, perhaps for 6 months or a year, and know that your organization is still covered even if you're not doing this stuff? And those are some of the big questions. You can automate all of this work, and that frees up your team to be working on the critical path that your organization requires you on, rather than being stuck down in the weeds on low-level tasks or on the hamster wheel of recurring tasks. So those are some of the big questions. And I'm afraid that when you buy a big system in the belief that that it can host all of this content, or that you're buying libraries of hundreds of thousands of pieces of content, we've got to take a look and think, is that the problem that needs solving in our organization? Or if I can get the technology to do all this hard work for me, what can I then do to add greater value to my organization?
Yes, these are really important messages. Essentially, focus on what you're supposed to do, which is helping people solve problems at work, and not the things that you're not really supposed to do, which is doing incredibly tedious and repetitive admin tasks that can be easily automated, as it has been in virtually every other aspect of working life. And once upon a time, everything was done more or less manually. Now virtually nothing is done. Poor old L&D needs to catch up, and they need to read that report, David. So the report is called Digital Learning That Works Harder So You Don't Have to. Good message, good conversation. Really appreciate your time. Thanks very much indeed. David James, CLO of Loop.co.
Thanks, Nigel.
In the L&D world, we all know our biggest challenge is knowledge fade and demonstrating ROI from our training interventions. At Elephants Don't Forget, we use artificial intelligence to guarantee that what you train your employees, they learn and retain. If you are looking to transform the impact your training content has in your business, improve the ROI, and perhaps help employees learn and retain even the dull regulatory material, drop me a line at nelly@elephantsdon'tforget.com.
Where would we be without Robin Hoyle? He's been such a regular contributor, kind of throwing into the mix a whole bunch of insights and controversies. And that's exactly what he's doing this month.
Some time ago, I introduced Learning Now TV's own Ewan Semple at a Learning Live event. And he was talking about algorithms. And one phrase that he used has stuck with me. And he said fairly early on in his presentation that there is no such thing as a neutral algorithm. Now, if you're in the UK, you will have been very much aware over the recent times of the fuss around A-level grades being awarded on the basis of an algorithm, which sought to replace the fact that because of COVID-19, the students hadn't been able to sit their exams. And there was a big hoo-ha because the algorithm which was used seemed to favour those students from relatively privileged areas, those from private schools, and those who came from deprived areas, regardless of their teacher assessments that they'd received in advance of this algorithm grading, were somewhat disadvantaged, with some of them not only being downgraded by 1 mark, but downgraded by several grades, so that they failed to meet the requirements that they thought they'd already achieved for university admission, for example. So there was clearly a bit of an issue here, and many within the learning and development community came out to say, it's not the algorithm's fault. The people who made the algorithm got it wrong, but don't blame all algorithms for this. Well, I thought at the time that that was a bit of a pat answer, and after seeing Ewan speak at that Learning Live event a few years ago, I actually did some digging around algorithms, and I found a very interesting example, which was an algorithm used for sentencing policy within the US, and specifically within the state of Florida. And what a group had done is they'd analysed 5,000 sentences of convicted criminals where there was a possibility that the conviction itself didn't necessarily warrant a custodial sentence. So it could be a fine or a suspended sentence or some other community sentence, or it could be go to jail. And they looked at the algorithm which had been used to determine the sentencing, and what they found over 5,000 or so convicted criminals was that they were given a broad spread of scores from the algorithm from 1 to 10, and if you scored 1, 2 or 3, the chances are you weren't going to jail, and if you scored 7 or above, you were going to jail, and the higher the score, the longer term your sentence was. What they then did was look at that group for 2 reasons. The first was, how likely were people to reoffend, which was the whole basis of the algorithm. The algorithm was designed to lock people up who were more likely to offend again. And the other thing that they did was that they looked at the race of the people to whom this algorithm had been applied. And of the 2,000 or so people who were white, the majority of them received a non-custodial sentence, and of the people who were African American or Hispanic, the majority of them received a custodial sentence because they scored higher. So the algorithm was feeding in data from past experience of the judicial system, which meant it was more likely for people who were deprived, more likely to have been sent to jail in the past, to be sent to jail again. In other words, the bias which was inherent within the system was baked in. And it seemed to me that that was exactly the same issue that was happening with A-levels. And so the people who wrote the algorithms couldn't say, oh, we didn't know this could happen, because this was just one piece of evidence, one experience, which I found in about a 5-minute Google search to understand what Ewan meant when he said that there is no such thing as a neutral algorithm. So this was public knowledge. People could have known that there was going to be some sort of problem. So when it comes to L&D and we're using algorithms increasingly to serve up content to people, to identify learning needs and to give them what they need or what we think they need, then what it seems to me is that what we're doing is using a lot of data from the past to replicate what's happened in the past. So the idea of algorithms is that they use historical data to create an opportunity to, as much as possible, build on that historical record. What we're trying to do here is preserve the status quo, not to be progressive, not to change things, and not to change things radically. Now, it seems to me that learning and development is, at its best, a transformational part of work. It is the sort of thing which enables us not just to continue doing the same, but actually to break free of what we've done in the past, to unlearn as well as learn, and to do things which we didn't think were possible. And where we are using algorithms, we need to be very, very clear that we're not simply using them to replicate the past, to create some kind of conformity, and to bake in some of the things that were wrong with the systems in the past to make sure that they become wrong forever, rather than just a historical blip that we can move on from. Oh, and that prison algorithm, the one that decided whether or not people should go to jail on the basis of reoffending rates, well, the other part of the study was that they found that there was no difference in reoffending rates, regardless of how you scored as a result of the algorithm. So if you got a non-custodial sentence, you were just as likely to reoffend as if you'd been sent to prison. And if you'd been sent to prison, you was just as likely not to reoffend as if you'd been given a non-custodial sentence. So in other words, the algorithm just didn't work. It failed in its own terms. Guess what happened next? It was rolled out across most of the rest of the USA, particularly in the southern states. You see, people have an enormous amount of faith in what the computer tells them is right. And sometimes that faith is misplaced.
DPG's online courses are designed to fit around your life, so you can study anytime, anywhere. Get in touch now for more info.
So I'm thrilled to welcome our next guest to Learning Now Television. Zara Clark Johnny is one of the 30 under 30 from the Learning Technologies 2020 group. She is also Digital Learning Partner at Southwark Council and recent star of the Learning Technologies Summer Forum. So thank you for joining us today, Zara. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
So I just wanted to start a little bit with the 30 under 30. You know, we're interviewing a few of your, hopefully all of your peers from that group. But can you tell us a little bit about how you got involved in that and how the experience has benefited you?
So the 30 under 30 is a program for young people in learning, and it's trying to kind of help develop the next generation of learning leaders. I found out about it in the learning news emails. At the time I wasn't actually working in L&D, but I was about to come back to the world of learning, so I thought it's like, yeah, I might as well still just give it a go and try to apply for it. So yeah, I did have to wait until I was actually in the new job to check with my line manager, but yeah, it was kind of just saw it as a way that I'd be able to like develop and grow and network with different people, and networking is not really that my strongest point, but it sounded like this would be something that would help me in that space, and anything that would help me to address something that I'm not so confident with is a good thing. in my opinion. So yeah,
Yeah.
it was just going for it. Didn't think I'd get chosen, but yeah, was really excited when I was. And then you get to go to the conference, you get a discount on the conference, and you got different sessions with different learning leaders, with your other 30 under 30 people. And it was just really good to be able to connect with people around the same age as you, talk about their different experiences, and see that that there are so many people doing like such positive things of a similar age to you, and just kind of be inspired by that. And then also getting to talk to those different learning leaders, ask questions, interact with them that you wouldn't normally be able to do. So it's just a really good opportunity to have that experience and that exposure, and being able to connect with people that you kind of normally think are just like off limits almost.
Yeah.
So yeah, it just opens up a lot more to you.
So it's a bit of a leveler.
Yeah.
That's good, and that, that's obviously what it's all about. And then from there, you've obviously recently not just taken part in, presented and joined a panel on the Learning Technologies Summer Forum. You've written a really great LinkedIn post, which we'll try and share the details of. But how was that experience for you? Because that's could be quite intimidating to some people. How was that?
It was very intimidating. Because I don't do a huge amount of presentations. I don't have a lot of public speaking experience. The last presentation I did was like 4 years ago. So for me, this was like it was quite a difficult thing that I was quite nervous about. But it was another thing where it's kind of, the experience that I could gain from it will be huge, and just go for it, because otherwise you'll just spend your whole life thinking, I just want to avoid it because I'm not that confident in this region. So yeah, just go for it. And then the support that you got. So I had meetings with Don Taylor and Michelle Paris later. So yeah, it was just kind of that support that I got from them was helped me to feel so much more confident with it and more prepared for it. And that learning that I got from them, I'll be able to take forward for future presentations and not feel so worried or feel like, are you sure that you got the right person?
And imposter syndrome impacts us all, right? And do you think that you'll take some of that back into your job, your day-to-day job inside the council?
Yeah, because although I do deliver training, but I don't need to do many presentations. But in terms of if I need to support someone else with preparing for one, that I kind of know more about how to structure things better, how to approach things, and just the tips in terms of if I am having to talk to someone more senior in the organisation, that it kind of gives you that confidence and just makes you feel a bit more confident in going into that.
And how has this is a common theme that we're talking to our guests about, but how has the COVID-19 pandemic impacted what you're doing day to day at Southwark Council? Because obviously it's a huge organisation with lots of people, and I'm guessing that a lot of them have needed training on all sorts of things in terms of being set up from home, etc.
Yeah, so at Southwark, so the project that I'm working on is called the Smart Working Programme, and that is it's a cultural transformation program. So it's covering technology, workplace, work skills, and culture. And within that, there is an element of giving people physical laptop devices so that they can now start working more flexibly. When the lockdown started, we were 2 weeks into 1 year rollout. So the majority of people didn't actually have their devices. We weren't really that well set up for home working. We didn't have, any video conferencing ability.
Yeah.
So those were things that had to be sped up a lot more. So right now, in terms of we introduced Teams in 3-4 days, just because you had to just get it out.
Microsoft Teams, yeah?
Yes, so Microsoft Teams. And but the physical devices will obviously take longer. So that's what we're doing at the moment in terms of building them specifically for them. But then from an L&D point of view and the culture point of view, also supporting staff with that home working ability, the managing from home, having that work-life balance, and also the mental health and well-being aspect of this is a very difficult time to be having all that stuff thrown at you.
Mm. And what's the response been? Because I think that's so important. And it's very easy for people like myself that work from home all the time to almost forget about some of that element and sort of gloss over some of that. But obviously, some of the mental health stuff has really come to the fore during lockdown. How have you gone about that? Is it just sort of giving people a space to talk, or is it sort of resources that they can access?
So it's been a combination. So we've been encouraging people within their teams and one-to-ones to be discussing how they're actually feeling and to make sure that they know it's okay to say that they're not okay. But also the resources, so working with HR, facilities, health and safety, all different teams, OT, organisation transformation, to be able to produce those resources and send them out to people and get them out to people so that they are able to access those kind of like things that they need. So whether it's just been a quick infographic, or if it's videos or toolkits or webinars or different types of training, so a variety of methods to be able to get that through.
And do you think it's enabled you to be again, this is a trend that we've seen quite a lot of, but do you think it's enabled you to sort of say, well, it doesn't have to be perfect, but it needs to be timely? So let's not go through 47 review cycles. Let's just get this out there now. Do you think it's enabled you to be a bit more agile as an organisation?
Yeah, definitely, because so for example, last year we would do a once a year annual staff survey, whereas now we're doing them more frequently because things are changing so much quicker, and then that data we're then able to act a lot faster and produce the resources or the support that is needed based on the current situation, rather than something that was like 2 months, 3 months ago, because that's not today.
Yeah.
So yeah, whether that's about the mental health and well-being, or within Southwark that we do have a lot of diversity. So a big element that we're working on at the moment is linked to Black Lives Matter. So, and how that is impacting our staff and our residents. So that's a big piece of work that we're doing right now, and it's not going to just be an overnight thing, but starting the work now, hearing from people, and hearing from people, and then being able to start putting those in place, but remembering the well-being aspect of that.
And as we, just as a final question, as we move into some sort of tentative recovery now, what do you think is next in your role? What do you think is kind of coming in the next sort of 6 to 12 months, in as much as we can plan at the moment?
So I think because at the moment it is now almost going out of the lockdown potentially, so it's kind of how do we prepare people for returning to the office, but because we're not, like, there's still a pandemic, so it's not going to be, even over the next 6 months, it's not going to be we're all 100% let's go back in. So it's also just how do we enable that, having some people in the office, some people in other locations, and still having that that collaboration, communication. So for example, at Southwark, then we don't really have the AV audio visual setup in most of our meeting rooms, because everything before lockdown was so physical. If you're meeting, you're physically there in the room. So that over summer is a lot of so when I talk about workplace, that is one of the things within workplace, is making sure that our actual office spaces are set up to enable that flexibility to take place.
And remain inclusive, right? So just because somebody is at home, if they've got to be shielding, they can still be part of
exactly. And that's why, so although we're hoping to over the next month start reopening the office, it's not going to be compulsory, it's not going to be mandatory. You've got that option, and we're really just trying to enable staff to have that choice and to still be included regardless of where they're working.
It sounds great, and you know, it's very heartening, I think, to hear a local authority really trying to be so empathetic, and to have that kind of caring for its staff and make sure that they've got options and choice, as you say. So we're out of time, but I would love it if we could maybe touch back in a few months' time and see how you're getting on with everything. So if you would, you know, consent to come back on LNTV, that would be great.
Yeah, that would be great. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Zara.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
Do your meetings and events leave you feeling inspired and energised? They should do. Too often, though, they are dominated by one person, they're frustrating, you wonder why you're there. Discover liberating structures. These are more than 33 different methods that involve everybody and are focused on the end result. We teach a one-day introduction and a two-day immersion workshop in which you'll get to experience over half of those structures. If you want to change the nature of the way your organisation runs meetings, this could be for you.
I'm delighted to speak to Kevin Streeter. He's the chairman of SEDMA Europe. And Kevin and I, we were wondering when we last spoke. It was probably 5 years or more ago. So it's a refreshing opportunity to talk to you again, Kevin. Welcome to Learning Now Television.
Thank you, Nigel. Great to be with you.
Tell us about yourself. What do you do, apart from chairman of SEDMA Europe, or what does that actually involve?
So, thank you. So, yes, my day job is I'm vice president of Ford Rock University. Ford Rock's probably one of those software companies you've never heard of. But if I say things like BBC iPlayer, whenever you log in, that's our software. Whenever you go online with somebody like HSBC or M&S Bank and you do login, that's our software. So I run the global training business that teaches people how to install, configure and run our software. Alongside that, that's not the only thing I do. So I chair SEDMA Europe. I'll talk a bit more about SEDMA in a minute. I'm chair of the British Computer Society Learning and Development Specialist Group, and also a fellow of the Learning Performance Institute, and been part of the LPI since long before its inception in the days of the old Institute of IT Training. So it's always been my world.
Well, welcome, Kevin. I suppose we could call you a bit of a geek, a bit of a techie. That would be fair.
A techie with a passion for learning.
A techie with a passion for learning. That's great. So let's talk about SEDMA and tell me, what does that do? What is its role in, what is it worldwide? You're chairman Europe. There must be a bigger organization somewhere else.
So SEDMA started in the US back in the very early 90s, and it was founded by companies like Oracle, IBM, Cisco. It's for the hardware and software vendors, for the training directors and VPs of those businesses. We all compete in product terms, but we all do learning. We all have our own learning businesses, and there wasn't really a forum for us to talk about the issues we have running global training businesses. So it started with a lot of the big vendors in the US, and a couple of years later, SEDMA Europe started, and represents all of the vendors in the European areas. So obviously, we're all from a hardware or software vendor space, but my peers cross a lot of other organizations. So my vice chair is Fires from ServiceNow, another big software company. We've got people right the way across the industry that are involved. So Google Cloud, right the way through Amazon, everybody. And it's very hard for us to find peers to talk about the issues we have. So I guess our form of learning tends to be a little different in that we're still very much into long form learning, hands-on. A lot of us still have 3 to 5 day classroom training. How do you handle the issues like the issues we've had this year with COVID, where you've suddenly got to take all this hardware-based training and put it online? How do you address issues like that? And how do you build certification programs that you normally use in a test center, how do you put those online? There's still learning issues, but it's our forum. So I guess we've grown to become the representative body for people involved in this commercial technical training world.
Would you describe yourself then as almost like a community of practice?
It's a community of practice. I talk about us more as a trade association, but yes, we're a community of practice for people that are, like myself, geeks involved in learning. We all generally have some form of technical background. We're also all involved in management because we all run our own learning businesses. But we also have to deal with a lot of issues like technology and the pace of change in technology. And how do you teach something that has only been on the market a couple of months to a global audience when really there aren't that many people who know about it?
Thank you very much. And let's talk now about the Certified Technical Training Manager Program. I think that's new. You've just about to launch it, or you've just launched it. Why would I need it? Who's it for? And how do you do it?
So yes, we've just launched the Certified Technical Training Manager exam. It's it's the final stage of a whole program we've been building over the last 3-4 years. And what we identified was there's a lot of people who understand learning. There's a lot of people who can specialize in learning design and content development, but actually there's some unique issues in running a commercial technical training business. And there was nothing available for us. And that talked about the commercial side, the product alignment, how do you work with product teams, how do you run a successful global training business when things change so fast? So we actually commissioned one of our past chairs to write a book for us, which is called Technical Training Manager. But that was the start of the process. We went, well, actually, it's great to have a book, but we really want people to engage with this and learn how to become technical training managers. And so we spent the last year building some online content. So we've got a video-based learning program. And then last month, we launched the certification. So you can now go through the whole journey. You've got the support materials with the book, you've got the online learning program, and you've got the certification. And we're using digital badging so that you can get recognition as you work your way through the program. And,
so who's it for, Kevin? Is it mainly for your members, for the training, the learning people in your organizations, or is it more generally targeted more generally?
It's very much a general, anyone that's involved in commercial facing training businesses.
Okay.
So
not just software.
Not just software, and anyone that's dealing with commercial training. So yes, the whole program breaks down into 3 primary areas. So there's a lot around business management. How do you run a learning business? That's applicable to a huge range of people. It's, okay, how do you balance all the different priorities in running a learning organization on a commercial basis? Then you've got the second piece around curriculum. How do you design the curriculum? How do you look after product management and engage with product development teams? Again, that's quite relevant to a lot of organizations. And the final thing is around delivery. So how do you do delivery? How do you cope with some of the issues, right from financial issues, governance, engaging with larger organization? We're all generally learning businesses within a large parent organization. So how do you manage those relationships? But also, how do you do things like hybrid learning? We're all moving to this world faster than we were expecting, but we're all moving to a world where a physical classroom really isn't part of our environment anymore.
Kevin, thank you so much for talking about that. As I say, the link is on the screen. Have a look. You have nothing to lose by looking, and potentially an awful lot to gain. So Kevin Streeter, it's been a pleasure talking to you today. Thank you very much for your time. And thanks for talking about the Certified Technical Training Manager program from CEDMA Europe. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Nigel. Thank you.
Our learning experiences unlock potential, transform the performance of people and organisations, and help millions around the world build happy and successful careers. We change lives with evidence-based learning that works, sparking real change for real impact.
My interviewee today is from Michigan in the United States. Her name is Megan Torrance, and she is the CEO of Torrance Learning, which is a pretty impressive job title. Now, Megan, first of all, for those who are not familiar with you and your work, tell us just a little bit about yourself.
Sure thing. So as you mentioned, I'm the CEO at Torrance Learning, which is pretty much my happy space, right? So we've got a team that is really focused around trust and flexibility and creativity and passion and fun. And that's where it starts. So we develop, design, strategize around mostly corporate workspace or association space learning for adults, although sometimes we get to dabble in some higher ed or K-12 projects.
Okay, so you use those words, and I think they're really interesting words. A work environment based on trust, flexibility, compassion, and fun. Now, I guess there's not a person who is watching this interview who wouldn't say, let me have some of that. All workplaces aren't like that. What do you say to organizations who want a bit more compassion, a bit more trust, a bit more flexibility, and a bit more fun? How do you engender or start the process moving towards basically a more humane and engaging workplace?
You know, one of our core values, Nigel, is generous collaboration. And it drives a lot of what we do. It's partly that we are putting out in the world with generosity a lot of things. So we run a lot of, we give away a lot of stuff for free. We've given out pandemic response courses for free, racial awareness courses for free. We host the XAPI Learning Cohort, which draws hundreds of people every semester. We've done this for 11 cohorts now, and we're supporting people in their learning. But it's also that the collaboration and the generosity also pivots to the receiving end, right? So we assume that everyone in the room has something to contribute of value. And when that's your starting place, the rest really becomes very easy. So we're trying to provide access to raise up underheard voices, whether they're young voices, whether they are marginalized populations, whether they are simply corners of our industry that we haven't heard from. And so that's really a big piece of that.
Yeah, and would you advise all organizations? That's a good starting point. If you're talking to someone in L&D who says, I've just got to change the culture of this business, that's where you would start. Listen to the unheard voices.
Yeah, and that it's so amazing what you can uncover when you go into even as a mentoring relationship, right? The mentor has so much to learn from the person who is ostensibly coming to them for advice. But if you're not getting something out of that yourself and learning, then you're missing the point. So there's so much that can be gathered from listening.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. Listening and really responding, asking good questions, listening to the answers and doing something about it. Not just, if you break at any point, i.e. you don't ask good questions, you don't listen well, and you don't turn it into action, disillusionment follows very hard on the heels of that, doesn't it? So I think it's those three things that are important. So in the last 6 months, where do you see L&D going? And there's some good news and some bad news. People have lost their jobs on the one hand, and yet massive investments in transforming learning in order to transform organizations on the other. From your perspective, what have you seen that you'd like to share with everybody?
I've seen the good, the bad, the ugly. There was very early on. Everybody, that's not a big, huge surprise. Everybody moved classroom activities to virtual classroom. Some people did that fantastically. Some people did that painfully and difficult. But what I'm also seeing is people leapfrogging. And somebody described it the other day. It's like the pandemic is an accordion for time, right? I am my roadmap is jumping ahead. I'm skipping. I've seen some really, really creative solutions that are allowing organizations to reach employee populations that they didn't serve well before because they were little tiny offices in far-flung countries and they never got to be, in with the headquarters. Well, now nobody's in at headquarters. And so they've been able to have a much broader conversation, which has been really, really interesting. And I've seen the companies that are doing really well in this space are making deliberate attempts to reach people on a one-on-one basis. Communication is a little bit harder, right? Communication's harder, but reaching people on a one-on-one basis is really key. So.
And if you follow through your previous logic, when you're reaching people one-on-one, ask good questions, listen, and turn it into action. And you've got that simple model is actually the basis for transformation, isn't it? Do you agree?
It really is. It really is, because and we all know this, right? Transformation it needs leadership, but it's not only a top-down environment, right? And where that top-down and the bottom-up meet or don't meet, that's where the creative piece of that happens, and it gets really exciting.
Yeah. Are you optimistic or pessimistic? Do you come out of this with a real enhanced sense of what's possible, or a depression because so much bad behavior is going on and so many organizations just don't seem to get it? Where's your balance?
I am on balance an optimistic person, right? I really feel that optimism gives you hope and a reason to act. Pessimism is your pessimism and those dark corners. That's what gives you what to act on, right? So a healthy balance between the two, but I am on balance optimistic. Do I feel like we're heading into a longer recession? Yeah, probably. Is that, and those of us who've been around the L&D space for a while, recessions are not good for us in general. This is not a good spot, right? And now I think this will be my third recession, and of course, one unlike, our world is unlike anything's been before, and so there's so much new, so much happening, so much opportunity, and so much threat and concern. So we have to learn and be creative.
So do you think that learning is actually one of the pathways out? Unlike other recessions, learning gets us out of this recession.
I actually do. And because with this sudden shift to masses of people working from home, masses of new processes and procedures and how do we do things, learning has been on the forefront. In fact, the pandemic has allowed organizations to see and L&D teams to rise up. We can be the first responders. We've never had a situation in which globally L&D is a first responder. And so we've been able to, if we're able to make a compelling message and tie results, right, back to the business results, then we have an opportunity actually to be in a forefront spot here.
Yes, I think that's really good advice. And surprisingly, it's a lesson that a lot of people still have to learn, in spite of people like you, Megan, giving that message again and again and again, and for a long time. It's a consistent message. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for talking to me and sharing your views, your optimism, and your trust, flexibility, compassion, and fun message. It's a great message to leave everyone with. So thank you, and thank you very much indeed, Megan Torrance.
I've enjoyed it thoroughly.
Well, Kate, that was an interesting program, wasn't it? What struck you? What did you like best? And what did you find most challenging?
Always a great show. I mean, I think David James's paper on automation sounds really interesting. You know, we've been talking a little bit about how, you know, every job involves doing boring stuff. So, you know, the more we can be liberated away from that to the interesting, you know, nitty gritty stuff, I just think, you know, why wouldn't you take that option, right?
I quite agree. And in some ways, Megan, the interview with Megan is saying some of the same things. Let's focus on what's important and not focus on what's trivial. Don't get right down to the minutiae. Think about the big picture. Think about what you actually need to do, not all the processes that are ingrained in you. And David's saying pretty much that, you know, let's get away from all the boring stuff, focus on what's important. That's not a bad message to leave, really, is it, for the show? I think that's good. Any conferences, Kate? Anything that we can remind people of or alert people to?
Well, obviously nothing happening in person as yet, but two major conferences have gone on completely online. So Devlin over in the US, and as somebody said to me the other day, yay, I might finally get to go to Devlin because they've never been able to travel to the US to do it. So it is a really great event, and that's happening on the 19th to the 30th of October. So they're obviously spreading that out over a number of days. And the CIPD annual conference is on the 11th and 12th of November. So check out their website for details.
Yes, I think there's a trend there, Kate, that conferences, instead of cramming them into 2 days or 3 days, which is what they would have been face-to-face, they're spreading them out a bit more so you can have a bit more of a conversation and engage a bit more deeply. So the models are evolving, aren't they?
And I think, isn't that what we say about events a lot though, right? Because when you go to a conference, a lot of it's kind of chalk and talk, a lot of it is crammed into those 2 days, and from a best practice L&D perspective, that is not how we would say to run training programs or learning interventions. So I think it's, you know, necessity is the mother of invention. So I think it's really interesting to see that evolution, and it almost feels like it's moving towards something that we would recognize more as learning best practice, if that makes sense.
I completely agree with you. Yeah, that's a good note to end on. And we ourselves are the mother of invention too. Changed Learning Now TV quite a lot.
And we're very pleased to welcome our first premium channel partner, Cornerstone. So look out for some exciting collaborations coming with them in the next few months.
Yeah, thank you, Cornerstone. It's great to welcome you on board. And we have two new regular contributors, Gemma Patterson and John Hinchcliffe. So welcome to them as well. And when's the next program, Kate? Tell us when that is.
Join us on the 24th of September.
See you there. Bye.